The Franciscan Monastery of the Holy Land in America commemorates a milestone of interreligious dialogue. A special edition of the Holy Land Review examines the meeting in 1219 between St. Francis of Assisi and Muslim Sultan Al-Malik al-Kamil in Egypt and its lasting impact. With more on the famous meeting, we're joined by Father Michael Cusato of the Franciscan Monastery of the Holy Land in America right here in Washington, D.C. Father, welcome into the broadcast.
Thank you very much.
How significant was St. Francis' encounter with the Sultan?
In the Middle Ages, actually had very little echo. It was a radical vision, one could almost say revolutionary vision in terms of Christian-Muslim relations. But at the time, it was such a countercultural vision that it had very little echo, even in the Franciscan order. But there are things that happened in this encounter which become extremely relevant to us today.
And it's so interesting because, yeah, it does play so much, so many people talk about it today, because Pope Francis reached out to Muslim leaders, as we reported earlier, and today he called for reform in the way theology is taught in Catholic schools, saying students must learn more about, in terms of interreligious dialogue between Judaism and Islam. So what example do you think St. Francis does for us in terms of interreligious dialogue for the Church?
Well, actually, you have to start where he started, which is to say, Francis grasped the common creaturehood of both Christians, Muslims, Jews, and any human creature. If you start with the commonality of what we all share together as creatures of God, we have a profound basis upon which to rest an active dialogue between the various faiths.
What message do you hope readers will take from the issue here of Holy Land Review and from sort of a deeper study of this meeting, which, like I said, 800 years ago now?
Well, there's been a great deal of scholarship done in the last 2 decades, let's say. And part of the impulse for the revolutionizing of Franciscan scholarship on this issue has a lot to do with the events of 9/11. Because we Franciscans realized that we have a story within our tradition which was very much underplayed throughout the centuries. And all of a sudden, with new eyes, we were able to see through these what are called hagiographical texts, texts which are kind of standardized models for how a saint should be. It comes from the Middle Ages. But underneath these hagiographical texts, text of First Celano, for example, Second Celano, and Bonaventure, there is another whole layer of meaning which now, with 21st century eyes, we're able to kind of unearth and to see and to find the radical vision of Francis about how we are brothers and sisters one to another. And it starts with Francis's own conversion experience when he saw Christ in the lepers.
It's such a fascinating, all the historicity here is just fascinating to me. The Franciscans, of course, are known for maintaining part of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem,
yes,
which obviously has inspired the monastery here in D.C. How does the order continue to carry out the works of St. Francis?
Here in Washington, you mean?
Well, and around the world, especially in the Holy Land.
Well, let's talk just about the Holy Land.
Okay.
Of course, the friars minor have what's called the custody of the holy places in Israel, in the occupied territories, in Egypt, and other places. Syria is a very important place for us, Jordan, Lebanon. We Franciscans occupy those places as guardians, if you will, of these holy sites. Here in Washington, we have kind of a very unique opportunity to be a gathering point for men and women of different faiths. The friars in the Holy Land try to be a kind of a neutral presence between a promoter of dialogue, if you will. And we here in Washington have the opportunity to use our neutral space as a gathering point for Christians and Muslims and Jews as well, the 3 monotheistic faiths. We also, most particularly, even now and for many years, we have been promoting out of Washington a whole series of pilgrimages to the holy sites. Some of them, there's all kinds of different menus for going there. One can have very limited, if you will, among the holy places in Israel and the territories. But then also there's more wide-ranging ones that go to Cyprus, that go to Lebanon, Jordan, and so forth. So the friars are the great promoters of the pilgrimage, especially for Christians, but not exclusively for Christians, in the holy places.
Such an important role the Franciscans have played and continue to play in this day and age, and of course inspired by the example of St. Francis of Assisi. Father Michael Cusato of the Franciscan Monastery of the Holy Land in America, thanks so much for talking with us.
You're very welcome.